आपादमौलिपर्यन्तं गुरूणाम् आकृतिं स्मरेत्येन विघ्नप्रणश्यन्ति सिद्धन्ति च मनोरथः लक्ष्मीतनूतनितरामितरानपेक्षमङ्गद्वयं निगमशाकिशिखा प्रवालं हैरम्बमम्बुरुहडम्बरचौर्यनिग्रं विघ्नाद्रिभेदशतधारधुरन्धरङ्घः सर्वेषां स्वागतम्. This is the last concept that we are going to explore in positive psychology from Sri Rama Gita. So this we have already seen partially when we did PERMA. PERMA is an abbreviation that constitutes five principal concepts that was put forth by psychologist, psychiatrist by the name of Martin Seligman. He's also known as the father of positive psychology. Now, in that PERMA, we have seen positive emotions, we have seen engagement, we have seen M stands for meaning, R is for relationship, A is achievements or accomplishments. Now, this M, however, is something that is very much relevant to what we are trying to do, because this M, that is meaning, which is the expansion within that PERMA model, on a more psychological level, it is exploring or trying to find the purpose of life. But here we are going to go into a more spiritual level. This is Sri Rama Gita. So through that Adhyatma, we are exploring a concept through that. So the meaning has a little more broadened meaning. So we'll try to understand what that is. So on a more framework level, when we say meaning, what are we trying to understand? What are we trying to get? First is coherence. Coherence means there has to be an order or a structure. Otherwise, it looks very, if I'm trying to explain something without any structure, it would look very messed up. For example, we have seen the Shastra Paddhati, how it is designed. In previous one of the Samskara sessions, we have seen how it is very well defined. We start with Purva Paksha, we see the Khandana, etc., etc., etc. We have a Drishtanta, so that it is a very well structured system through which we are trying to establish or convey a particular message. So there, the meaning, when we are trying to understand it, it has to be coherent. So that means there has to be an order, there has to be structure, there has to be some kind of predictability in that model. Like when we are doing experimentation, when we do our experimentation, we are doing our experimentation with a test subject. There is a population. In that research, we are not going to experiment on all of the population, so we have to take only the sample. And then we have to understand that there has to be a control as well as there has to be a experimentation class. So there we have set up two classes. There is one control, and then there is what we experiment in. And then we compare the results. Then we draw the analysis, or we draw the inference out of it. So all these are similar structure for all kinds of experiments. So there has to be some predictability. Then the purpose needs to be set. That means why the meaning, when I'm trying to understand the meaning, there has to be a purpose for that meaning, because otherwise it will look out of context and my value is not going to be a part of it. When I say it has to be coherent, then obviously when I'm speaking about photosynthesis, it cannot be for any other reason but to understand how plants make food. So it we know the purpose why we are talking about it. So having a clear sense of direction or goals is very important. So any experimentation nonetheless has its own purpose, because it is only based on hypothesis we usually go about it. But apart from that also, any meaning also, there has to be a direction. Like for example, I take home. Home in what context? I'm talking about maybe that particular building where I live in. Contextually, it can grow. If I'm in another state, I can say I miss my home. And there it doesn't only limit to that building. The meaning, it expands to all the ambience that we get from that locality, from the places that we have been to, where which we associate or closely attach ourselves to. Then we are out of our country. Then even though I've never been to different parts of the country, I call the whole of the India as my home. So there are different uh, purpose. If I don't know what is the purpose, then I will not be able to understand the meaning. So meaning also requires purpose. Then significance, feeling that one's life has importance, value, and impact can only come from understanding how that meaning, that is grahana of that meaning, the understanding, absorption of that meaning, how it enriches you. Without understanding that, we will not be able to associate any value with that meaning. Like, for example, we have something called as RTI Act. RTI is Right to Information. What has changed when before we had that act? After we got that act, what is it that changed? So that value addition that we find in our life, that brings about a more weightage to that meaning. Anyway, that is the metaphoric concept of that meaning where what we are searching for. Next, belonging. Feeling connected to others, a community or a social group. This is more in context what we are trying to do. So when we are trying to understand Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi or any other, we are trying to understand how, despite looking differently, despite having different character traits, etc., all those things, how we are made up of one essence. The manifestation has only occurred through one essence. So we know we are connected to each other. So that source of that, that sense of belonging should also be there with meaning. Then, so what are the sources of meaning? Where can we find this meaning? In samsara, we find it with relationships, how we codepend, how we interact with each other, how in that interaction we have uh, support, we get support, and how we lend support. All this gives meaning. On a personal level, it is the work we do. Work we do can be broadened, not the job we do, work we do. It can be volunteer work, it can be for something. This is also work. I'm doing, why am I doing this, etc., etc. So those kind of questions. Then on a personality wise, it is personal growth, that is maturity of thought, how we learn from our mistakes, how our improvement is occurring, that one. Then spirituality, we can find what is meaning of life or of existence through spirituality. And this spirituality, as we have learned with transcendence, it is going beyond what the physical barrier is. Then when we talk about all these things, we have to understand why it is important. Finding meaning also gives us motivation towards anything, because external motivation is through appreciation. When somebody appreciates us, but we nobody gets appreciation immediately, and nobody gets it in the right amount that we need. So in that case, what happens is, when we find meaning in what we are doing, the impact of that appreciation in giving motivation is less, because we can bring about motivation on our own. That is important. So increased motivation is a benefit of knowing the meaning. Then improved well-being. Obviously, when I'm able to motivate myself, it must be from a healthier base level of well-being. So I'm self-sufficient. So there it obviously improves our well-being. And then resilience, we have seen adversities at any stage. We find any adversities, we are able to go or we are able to meet it and we are able to cross it. Purposeful living, the gratified sense of gratification, where we feel that yes, we have lived a full life, we have lived a well lived life, or we say sarthakata. So the the feeling that I have done whatever I can in this life, whatever I could achieve in this life, I have done it. I have lived it up to my full potential, up to expectations, etc., etc. So this is purposeful living. So these are all the benefits of that living. Then how do we cultivate these? This how do we cultivate? As in, how do we start searching for it? How do we start looking at this values? So we reflect on meaning. How do we start understanding the meaning of life or meaning of existence? That it lies on reflection upon our values, introspection of the decisions we have taken, exploring that particular purpose. When we start to nurture relationships, that means when we do acts such that the relationships that we have tries to bond better, when we uh, have an analysis of what kind of relationships have that we have cultivated, all this helps us to understand the meaning of life. So this meaning is a concept, it's a very profound concept, but we will be understanding it with the next two sessions as well. So this is the uh, concept of meaning of life or existence or whatever, but this is meaning. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः प्रतिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महीं महिषा गोब्राह्मणेभ्यो शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि।